Good day, this is Dr. Ron McFarland with ISOL531 Access Control from the University of the Cumberlands. And today's lesson is Lesson 6, Access Control System Implementations and Access Control Solutions for Remote Workers. The top of the slide deck right here that you'll find online. And again, we're talking with cybersecurity, people, process, and technology. So we're focusing today's lecture about policy, standards, guidelines, and procedures. Now, follow applicable standards where appropriate, and your organization may follow one, two, or multiple of these guidelines. IEEE, the NIST standards, which is done a lot in DoD type of suppliers and the DoD environment, FISMA, ISO, more international flavor or international dealings, IETF, the PCI standards, which is credit cards and the like, and CIS standards. Identity management and access control consists of these three aspects: a way to identify all associates within an organization. Number two, the review of identities to ensure they are categorized correctly. That will limit mistakes. And number three, every organization has its own standards for acceptable identity depending on the risks of that organization and the risk of the assets within the organization. User behavior, application, and network analysis consists of these three initial aspects. By understanding normal behavior, you are able to detect activities that are unusual. And in a way, that's one thing that policies and procedures provide your organization with, is a guideline of what is normal behavior. Number two, user behavior and application analysis provides the data needed to ensure systems are available. And number three, network analysis provides details on both users and applications as well as network traffic. Size and distribution of staff and assets. Number one, creating a complete inventory of IT assets is one of the first steps in implementing access controls. There's some software out there that will run through your system and gather all the data about hardware and software that you have on the system environment. This will give you a good baseline to check to see for updates, any type of old software or hardware, or even hardware and software that does not belong on the information system. Number two, the access control system should be based on the risk assessed against the data and network access. And number three, tools available, as we mentioned, that can monitor or manage staff and assets. Now, multi-layer access control contains these five aspects. We've already talked about user access control profiles. Likewise, there's system access, application access, file and folder access, and specific data access. Now, access control for employees, remote employees, customers, and business partners involve these four general aspects. VPN should always be used. Intranets versus intranets within the organization. Extranets are those environments that span the organization. If you're a supplier to a larger manufacturer, you may have an extranet connection to that larger organization. Secure e-commerce sites with encryption. So much of that is a standard best practice in today's environment. In addition, secure online bank access control implementations. I noted earlier PCI compliance. that would fall into this aspect. Logon and password access, again in Active Directory. You have a lot of controls within Active Directory to do that, and you've seen that already with some of the lab assignments. Identification, imaging, and authorization as well. Best practices for access control implementations involve these 9 aspects. The first one, understand the roles within the organizations, roles of individuals, their responsibilities. Number 2, understand the data that resides on the network. Number 3, establish a baseline. You always want to establish a baseline because then you can measure against that baseline. Number 4, monitoring activities on a continuous basis. Number 5, create guidelines and policies that are easy to understand and implement. Number 6, manage user accounts. 7, manage remote access capabilities. And 8, provide strong security. And I mentioned 9, but it really should be that the 9th one is to pull all your logs together in a seam as well. And a seam will provide you with the tools to do the analysis for all the logs that you have pulling in from various parts, hardware, and software devices on your information system. Now, remote access methods, Radius, RAS, TACIS Plus, and VPN. Let's go through some of these. Identification, authentication, and authorization, IAA, involves these 3 aspects. Identification is the process of uniquely distinguishing an individual. Authentication is the process of verifying that users are who they say they are. And authorization is determining which actions are allowed or not allowed by a user. By the way, as a side note, USB tokens are often used. Passwords are required as a second authentication factor to gain access to the computer system. And USB tokens are hard to duplicate and are tamper resistant. And user USB tokens have the ability to store digital certificates that can be used in a PKI or public key infrastructure environment. Those are noted a little further in the textbook. Access control to minimize risk include AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. And if you get into networking or firewalls, you'll see AAA noted extensively. Radius, remote authentication dial-in user service. Remote access server, or RAS. TACIS, which is Terminal Access Controller, Access Control System Plus. TACIS was invented by Cisco Systems. TACIS Plus is the current version. XTACIS, network services that provide security through a framework of access controls and policies. They enforce policies and provide information needed for billing purposes, and that's where the accounting portion comes into play. It's a framework that multiple protocols are based on. For example, Radius uses AAA and supports authentication and authorization separately from accounting. So it's a blend, if you will. Remote authentication dial-in user service, Radius. It's a client-server protocol that provides authentication and authorization for remote users. It provides accounting as well, and a network protocol providing communication between a NAS and an authentication server. There's a diagram in the textbook regarding some of these aspects. Take a look again in the textbook. This is just an overview to get you warmed up. Here's the Radius structure. Aspects as the Radius server is point blank towards the lower portion, middle of the screen, and that's tied with the authentication server. Above that is the VPN server that's passing through the internet Okay, always use VPN. The dial-in services is on the left-hand side of the screen, and on the right-hand side is a network access server along with the Radius client, and you'll see the wireless access point the WAP over to the right-hand side as well. The remote access server provides authentication for remote access in an internet and dial-up scenario. The process is that the user connects to the RAS. The credentials are compared against the database. Of course, if the credentials match, authentication has occurred and a user is granted to TACus Plus. It's Cisco proprietary. It's for network access servers. It provides control for routers and other networking devices. It uses TCP. It's an extension of TACus, and it separates authentication, authorization, and accounting, the AAA, and TACus Plus does the encryption for the communication. Here's a comparison chart between Radius and TACus Plus. The attributes are listed on the left-hand side. The Radius uses UDP, encrypts only passwords, and it's not considered a pure AAA architecture. TACus, it relies on TCP/IP, the three-way handshake. It encrypts the entire body of the packet, and it's purely a AAA process. Remote authentication protocols include, there's more than this, but here's the essential: point-to-point protocol, chat protocol, challenge handshake authentication protocol, and the extensible authentication protocol. VPNs, a secure connection over an unsecure network, such as the internet. Security over VPN is provided through encryption, and there's tunneling protocols associated with VPN, including PPTP, which is point-to-point tunneling protocol, the L2TP, which is layer 2 tunneling protocol, and IPsec, which is actually a suite of protocols. If you are doing later on the Cisco security certification, you'll dig deeply into IPsec. The book has information about these three tunneling protocols that you should review. Web authentication, ensuring users are who they say they are through a web application. User ID and password, basic form. Other forms include a one-time password, digital certificates, and the knowledge base authentication. Best practices include the following 5 aspects. Determine the security risk associated with a remote access. Select a remote access option that addresses your particular security needs. Determine the appropriate level of authentication and ensure the systems are accessing the networks meet the security policies of the organization and ensures protection of systems that remote workers access. So, in summary, read chapters 11 and 12. There's a lecture quiz, and again, with the quizzes for each of the chapters, you have only one attempt. And it's been my pleasure. Ron McFarland with ISOL531, Access Control, University of the Cumberlands. Thank you.